You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where it's all about education, support, and coaching for adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Xena, a late diagnosed ADHDer, here to help you unpack the challenges, frustrations, and the positive side of living with ADHD. With my no BS approach, I'll help you to better understand your unique ADHD brain and how you can work with it to feel better, increase your self-confidence, improve your relationships, and ultimately achieve your goals. Hello, my friends. We have got a treat today. I love to say that. But this conversation that you are about to hear between myself and my friend and colleague, Brett Harrington, is incredible. So she's an expert when it comes to all things parenting with ADHD. If you yourself have ADHD or you have kids or teenagers with ADHD. I had so many questions because I myself helped to raise 3 boys. I co-parent 3 boys, one of whom is now officially a teenager. And it's a whole nother level. So I had a lot of questions. You guys also shared with me many of your questions, things like, how do we deal with, kids in the evenings when we ourselves are overstimulated or perhaps coming off our medication? And, what about, managing emotional regulation with ourselves as well as with our kids and helping to teach that with kids, transitions between, play to dinner to, after school to coming home and doing homework and all of that. So we had so many incredible questions and, incredible discussions that happened in this, and you're about to hear it all. All right, I'm going to stop talking. Let me tell you a little bit about Brett. Brett Harrington is a registered clinical art therapist, and she's a specialist with ADHD management. She herself has ADHD, as you will hear in this. She was late diagnosed, like many women. She's been working with children and adults with ADHD as a therapist, coach, and counselor. Oh, my friends. I'm going to say it again. She has been working with children and adults with ADHD as a therapist, coach, and counselor for over a decade now. Brett supports adults, children, and families to develop strategies for managing with ADHD at home, also at school, at work, in a way that is positive, accepting, and informed about the complex ways in which our ADHD can impact how we function. So her approach includes DBT, which is dialect behavioral therapy, also CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and psychoeducation. And she often delivers that through creative and visual means. All right. My friends, enjoy this incredible conversation. You're going to want to take notes. So I appreciate if you're driving or out, educating. What is going on with my words? Look at this, ADHD in real time. If you're out walking or running or what have you, you may just want to take some notes in your phone or do it later. Not when you're driving. That's not a great idea. You get what I mean, right? I'm just giving you a heads up. There's some nuggets and I had to write some stuff down. That's it. I'm just going to leave it there. My words are failing me this morning. Enjoy this incredible episode on all things ADHD and parenting. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where I am so excited that we today are joined by my new friend and colleague, Brett Harrington. Welcome to the podcast, Brett.
Thank you, Xena. Kia ora.
It is so awesome to have you here. Can you please tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are, what you do, maybe even your ADHD story? I say little, but I appreciate that may not be a little question.
We'll try to keep it simple. So I'm like one of those adults who got diagnosed later in life. Of course, the first time I was diagnosed, I had to explain to the psychiatrist what ADHD is, which is indication of how far things have come. But I think I was in my late 30s at that point. But I'd known all my life that something was amiss. And of course, the people around you would say, "You're nothing wrong with you. You just need to try harder."
Yeah.
and that's not very helpful.
Mm,
So fast forward many years, my kids are old enough that they don't need me hovering around. And so I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? And so I hit upon this idea that I would become an ADHD coach because I knew I had a lot of life skills that I felt could be useful.
mm-hmm,
So I took the training and that was fine. And I started my little business, ADHD Sorted.
mm-hmm,
And that was good, but there was more I wanted to do. So some years later, I went back to school and got a master's in arts therapy,
mm-hmm.
and which has been amazing in terms of being in the therapy space, but also an incredible way of working with a lot of people, but especially children, although I don't work with children exclusively.
Yeah.
But I came to New Zealand 18 years ago, and yeah, ever since I got my master's, I've been pretty busy.
Yeah. And where have you come from?
Originally from, well, it's hard to say because I'm kind of from all over, but the northeast of the U.S.
Hmm.
But I was actually brought up in the Caribbean, in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Wow.
So
I'm sure
I'm
you've got a
used,
lot of stories.
I'm used to island life.
I love it. I love it. So, first of all, the reason I invited you on is you and I caught up for coffee over Zoom a little while back now because I have been, mentioning your name and sending many of my clients and people who ask me about help with specifically teenagers
Thank
to
you.
you. And when we hopped on the Zoom, like I was just blown away by so many of the things that you said and you shared with me and just the way in which you talked about helping kids. So, how is it that you help parents who have children with ADHD?
Right. I love to help kids with ADHD by
Mhm.
helping their parents. Um, Parenting a child with ADHD can be unintuitive. So we're brought up, I think, from when we're quite little, that if you do something wrong, somebody kind of growls at you and you go, "Oh, okay, well, I see what I did wrong there, so next time I'll do something else." Unfortunately, when we have ADHD or we're in some way neurodiverse, that moment of, "Oh, I see what I did there, next time I'll do something else," isn't really happening.
Mm,
We help parents to bring to their own experience of parenting a child with ADHD what you want them to bring to their children, which is understanding and
mm,
compassion. It is so easy when we have kids with ADHD to get overwhelmed and react, and maybe we even start feeling badly about ourselves or beating ourselves up. And this really only exacerbates the situation. It only escalates from there. What we want to do is pause and look at the situation that's occurring with a deep understanding that you as a parent are doing the best you can. And that's all
yeah,
anyone has the right to ask. Your kid is a good kid.
yeah.
Okay. So if you step back from the situation and go, let's see, I know I know enough parent and I know my kid is awesome. What's really happening here? How can I better equip myself, my child, to meet these situations with which are difficult? Because, right, your child isn't giving you a hard time. Your child is having a hard time. Okay.
Oh, that's
So,
good. I just want to repeat that back. Your child isn't giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time.
yes, and I can't
That's
take
good.
credit for that one. I don't know who gets the credit, but it's something
But
I've
it's
heard.
good.
But
Yeah.
it's very good. And so there's a forgiveness there. There's
Mm,
okay, somebody doesn't have the skills, the maturity or the emotional skills to manage this situation
mm,
at yet. Okay. So as parents, we got to give ourselves permission to learn how to manage difficult situations, knowing that again, we're enough. Okay.
mm,
But this can be tricky. And so when things are difficult, I think of it, I call it a red flag. First of all, we kind of we try to learn to anticipate what's going to be the difficult situation. So here's a classic. You've just picked your child up from school. Let's just say they're on medication, or even if they're not. But you've just picked a child up from school who's probably been working really hard all day to hold themselves together. And they come out of school and they're tired and they're letting go of whatever it is they were doing to kind of hold it together in school, and you whisk them into the car and you say, right, okay, so we have to do an errand, and then we're going to go home, and then you have to do your homework, and it's all too much, especially if a child is also the effects of the medication are wearing off.
Yeah.
So that's when everybody kind of melts down.
Mm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so if this is the case, then you want to look at the situation with curiosity. Okay, I'm an enough parent. I have a good child. What's going on here? Ah, okay. This whole afternoon after school thing is too much. We're not handling it. How can we do this differently? Well, first of all, when you pick up your child, maybe come with a high protein snack.
Yeah.
That can be really helpful. And
Yeah.
then maybe instead of going, home right away and getting to your homework or doing an errand, you two of you or how many of you there are, you head out into nature for a little while. Maybe you do
Mm.
a domain or a beach or someplace where there's no agenda. They can
Yeah.
just relax because nature can be really, um, regulating. Um,
Mhm.
so everyone pauses. Everyone
Mm.
pauses. Everyone kind of waits till that nervous system has a chance to calm down a bit, and then you approach whatever's going to happen next. So that's a strategy. It's
Yeah.
about looking at your situation, whatever it may be, and going, okay, how do we do this?
Mm.
Not how, for heaven's sakes, should we
Yeah.
do this, which is a
Yeah.
bad
Should.
idea, but how do we do this? Okay.
Yeah.
And this can be true for your nighttime ritual or your morning ritual, or your routine, I should say, your morning routine, any of those kind of situations. And you try to be wise to who your children are, how they are at this time, where they are in terms of their ability to cope and their maturity and their skills and so forth. And you try to anticipate what are we about to do and what can I do to prepare this child? So
Mm.
for a classic one is before going to a birthday party where there's going to be a lot of sensory input,
Yeah.
a lot of demand on their ability to cope with high feelings, maybe a lot of sugar, a lot of
Mhm.
excitement, a lot of people getting stuff maybe that you're not getting.
Mhm.
Um, and so you might, for example, prepare that child with a social story. So there's a lot on the internet about social stories, so I won't go into a whole lot about it, but I'll give you an example. So, for example, when my kid was little, he might have been around 5 or 6 or so, and we're going to a neighborhood birthday party. And I knew these kids were going to be a little bit older. It was going to be a big party. And so I told them a story. I said, once upon a time, there was this really cool kid who was about 6 years old, and he got invited to a birthday party of some 8-year-olds. Well, this was really exciting for the boy, and go on and on and on. And then when he saw the other kids' pile of gifts, it was really hard for him. He really wanted gifts too. And so he started feeling a little jealous. So I'm making the situation that he's about to enter explicit.
Mm. That's good. I've never heard of that before. So social stories.
Social stories, there's a lot
Yeah.
about it on the internet. If you're interested and you wanna know more, there's a
Yeah.
lot out there. But it's a way of preparing your child, with explicit information about, here are the feelings you might have.
Yeah.
Here's what might happen. Oh, that might be really overwhelming. That might even be a little scary. Or maybe it'll make you a little, you don't say you say our hero, this
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah.
okay? Might make him a little mad. So, he goes to talk to his mom about it, or he kind of, sits aside for a moment and remembers a time at his last birthday when he had lots of gifts. Um, so it's explicitly preparing a child for what they might be encountering with
Yeah.
the language that's going to help them understand. So when
Yeah.
they get into that situation, they may be able to identify, oh, this must be overwhelm, or
Yeah.
oh, I am jealous that that kid has so many gifts and things like that.
Yeah. So you're
So
normalizing it as well as giving them the language and the tools to be able to navigate the situation.
absolutely.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love that. That's beautiful. One question I get a lot is when somebody has, ADHD themselves, and then they have a child or multiple children who also have ADHD, and they both struggle to regulate their emotions.
Mhm.
How, do you have any tips or advice for them in that situation when, potentially they've got a teenager who is, let's just say, losing their shit and not handling their emotions, and they've perhaps had a bad day at school and are falling out with friends, and then, the parent is trying to parent this teenager and they're struggling to, not react in that situation.
Um, so it again, it starts with a certain degree of anticipation.
Mm,
Teenagers' brains are undergoing vast change. Their brains haven't changed that much since they were toddlers. And there's all kinds of new stuff coming online in that brain that they didn't used to have.
mm, yeah.
And suddenly it's all kinds of different kinds of emotions. And suddenly
Mm,
it's peer, needing to fit in with peers. And it's a lot. Okay.
mm,
So as parents, we kind of need to be aware that this is coming.
yeah.
And it will pass. It will calm down.
Yeah.
I think why we react as parents is that we're trying to hang on to control.
Yeah.
Because we think, again, bad word, we should.
Yeah.
Okay, we think it shouldn't be this way, or we should have control, or they shouldn't be behaving this way, or they should be more respectful and all this stuff. And unfortunately, this line of thought doesn't teach us anything useful.
Mm,
It just kind of gets us stuck.
mm-hmm.
So
Mm,
if we can step back for a moment from their emotions, realizing that what we're seeing is their, there's currently a cyclone going on in their internal world. All right. And by kicking up our own cyclone, we're not going to make it better. So we learn to be wise, to look at it wisely and manage it wisely and step back and allow those emotions to do what they're going to do while we are also taking care of ourselves. Maybe we breathe a little bit, maybe we step back and remind ourselves that we're enough and we're doing the best we can, right? And then when the teenager calms down, there's a way of approaching a teenager that a lot of my clients have seemed to found helpful. And these are principles, all right? There's not a prescription, it's a principle.
mm-hmm.
So let's just say, your teen is calmed down enough to be approachable because you can't change anyone. You're not going to win an argument when somebody is emotionally triggered and
Yeah.
hijacked.
Yeah.
So what you might want to do is say to your teen, this is what I'm seeing. So, for example, in this hypothetical case, I noticed that when you came home from school today, I noticed that you seemed really agitated.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, um, should I be concerned? Should I be worried?
Mm,
So this is a really amazing question because it's not judging the child. It's not saying, well, what's wrong or, what, you shouldn't be that way or whatever. It's just asking them, is this cause for concern? Should I be concerned
mm,
about this? Or what I used to like to say is, should I be worried? And
yeah.
sometimes I'd get a chuckle. Sometimes there would be this like pregnant pause. And sometimes there'd be an I don't know. And
Mm,
this is a really, really an amazing question to ask because it's it's asking the teenager for information um, that will be useful to you about their own experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer may be, nah, I'm all right. Okay,
Yeah.
which is good. You let it go. If it's I don't know or there's silence, you might say, okay, let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Yeah.
So what we're doing there is we are stepping back from the business of making suggestions.
Mm.
All right. I
Or
call it getting
assumptions. Yeah.
assumptions. Exactly. I call it
Mm.
getting out of the suggestion business.
Mm. Good.
Because when we do that, we're actually demonstrating faith in our team that they can figure this out. But they're not alone. Let me
Yeah.
know if there's anything I can do to help. I'm not going to intrude. I'm not going to tell you what you need. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to allow you. I have the faith in you to come back to me and say, Mom, it would be really helpful if when you pick me up from school, you brought me a snack.
Mm.
With it were that simple. But those of us with ADHD are going to be trying to figure out how to manage ourselves for the rest of our lives. The sooner we get on to the business of figuring out how we're going to do that, the better. And
Mm.
when our parents are not doing all the thinking for us, we now have the freedom and the space to start figuring out, okay, how do I manage myself?
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. I think, yeah, once we remove all of the shoulds, and take a step back, we give them the opportunity to explore that in themselves. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Beautiful. Tell me, I'm curious. I've got a few people I know, and I struggle with this as well. When our medication is wearing off, right? So we're a parent with ADHD, our medication is wearing off later in the evening, and there's multiple kids who, one or more will have ADHD. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of, I know we have like the fighting over the beanbag, and then the TV's turned on, and then it's turned up, and then it's fighting over the channel, and there's a lot going on. And heaps overstimulation basically. And one thing I will often hear from people is like the kids then start climbing over you and you lose it. Like, that's it. You start yelling and you're all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't, you know, lost it at the kids. It's not their fault. Can you speak to that for us?
Yes, I think so. I'll try to.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this happens to all of us at some point. And that's to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think of those of us with ADHD as just like everybody else, right? We're just more.
Yeah.
We can, be more emotional, and we can also be more interesting, and we can be more, interrupty, and we're just everything more.
Yeah.
Okay. However, after a certain point, if this is a pattern that happens in your family, we can't be surprised anymore.
Mm.
Okay. So look, if you, let's say, have diabetes, right? That particular type of diabetes where you're constantly having to manage your blood sugar. So you have to think about, okay, where am I going? What is there going to be to eat? Am I going to be able to, take my blood test? You have to always be thinking about how to keep yourself alive by
Mm-hmm.
managing your blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a family with a lot of ADHD, you have to be constantly managing the neurochemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you got to be smart. You got to be wise. You got to anticipate. Okay. So I'm taking my medication now, which means it's probably going to start wearing off around 6 p.m. Let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see. Tommy's going to start wearing off at 3. So he'll be like full ADHD by 6 o'clock. And you got to think this through. You got to be
Yeah.
strategic.
Yeah.
No one's to blame. No one's at fault. This is just your reality. Congratulations, you're raising super children, okay? They're
Mm-hmm.
more, all right? And
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little harder. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're gonna have to anticipate and put in those strategies. What can we get Tommy involved with? So around, 6 o'clock, he's maybe out on the trampoline, getting rid of excess energy. We're gonna put Emily in a book because that's where she's happy at that time of
Mhm.
day. And I am going to, you know, breathe deeply for 10 minutes at 5:45 in preparation for 6, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe we have a family activity or everyone goes to their corners at 6 o'clock, and that's part of our routine.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I do. Like, I will often know when it's coming for me, and it's not all the time. I should think it's quite like attached to my cycle. And we have a system with my partner and I after dinner. I go up to my air quotes corner, which is I just go up to the bedroom and I have some downtime, and he takes care of the kids, puts
Mhm,
them to bed, and does all of that.
mhm.
And like I will often say to clients, it's about like having a, like I call it a protocol. Like, what's the protocol that we're going to like use if and when this happens? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're smart about it, you're strategic, it's
Yeah.
not a surprise.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
now and then, you might lose it, but I think in those times, it's really helpful that everyone is aware, that there's some honesty about it, so that when things become overwhelming, maybe you have a code. "Okay, code red,"
Yeah.
which means, "Wait a minute, w we all gotta step back here, okay?"
Yeah.
And everyone knows that code red means that, um, that the things have gone out of control and we're going to have to regroup and think about what we're all doing. It's not, it's not a reason to get angry, but it's a reason to just say, okay, everybody step back.
Yeah.
We need to regroup.
Yeah. I love that, having a code word. Code red's probably a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good.
Okay. And then, and kids really, I think, especially kids with ADHD who love that structure, they really like to know what's going on, and and especially when they are kind of winding out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually a pleasant situation,
Mm.
so the kids really like to know somebody's managing this, somebody's got this, and it's not them.
Yeah. One of the things that you said to me that really spoke to me was every behavior is a form of communication. Like
Yes.
every, yeah.
Mhm.
What are some of the common behaviors that you see from kids with ADHD and perhaps that, parents may struggle to interpret or understand?
Meltdowns.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Tell us more.
Meltdowns. Meltdowns. I see more families with children who are having meltdowns. So, there's an I learned this every behaviors of communication from this guy. He says, I think he's a psychologist in the US. His name is Ross Green. And I learned this from him. And he talks about this, that if you look at a behavior as something that needs to stop, and now you're trying to stop that behavior.
Hmm.
Um, it's possible sometimes, but in doing so, we're failing to understand what's behind the behavior. And it's more helpful for the individual and everyone if you understand what's behind the behavior, then you work with that and the behavior goes away or the
Yeah.
behavior shifts.
Yeah. So
So
why have they had a meltdown? What has led to that? What's happened for them?
exactly, not
Yeah.
only that, but what are the skills that are missing for this one that meant that they were not able to meet expectations, the
Mm,
expectation that they'd be able to manage a situation better. Because where you see the behavior, there will be something the child doesn't have yet in terms of a skill or an understanding.
oh, that's really good. So what are the skills that they don't yet have that they're
Exactly.
missing to help them manage the situation?
Exactly. So if you
Mm.
take a difficult situation, right? A child is having a meltdown at school, and for example, I will try to get as much information about this meltdown. When did it happen? What time of day? What was going on around them? Try to get as much information about what were the circumstances of the meltdown, and in doing so, we create a statement. So this individual is having trouble with accepting or tolerating change at lunchtime when everyone leaves to go to morning tea. I don't have all the words right, but so now you have a statement that you can work with. How can we help the child to manage the shift at midday from the classroom to wherever they have their lunch?
Mm.
Okay. Now you have something specific that you can work with. And
Mm.
you can help the child come up with maybe some strategies or some ways of dealing with the shift from going from around midday, because, maybe around midday they're hungry.
Yeah.
Maybe around midday, their brain is maxed out from trying to learn all morning and they have nothing left. Maybe so you work with that and you help them to you give them understanding. Okay, I think maybe by midday, buddy, your brain is really tired and you're a little overwhelmed by all the noise and activity of everyone running around, and you're not sure where your friends are that you're going to eat with, and you really, really need some food and a rest. And so we help the child understand what's going on for them, equip them with some strategies, and so they can learn how to manage those situations a little more skillfully.
I love this because what we're talking about is you're helping them to understand themselves
Hmm.
and show them that like this is okay, right? Like, and we can help you to navigate it. Like I think the like a word that comes to mind for me is like self-acceptance, which I think is so much of the work that we do later in life when we're diagnosed later in life. And I think that we're helping them through navigate that journey from a younger age.
Zena, you are spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yay, you. Self-acceptance,
Yeah.
okay? So this could
Yeah.
be, this could be the theme of everything we've talked about today. How do you help your child with difficulties? Start with your own self-acceptance. Oh, I'm an enough parent and I'm doing the best I can. I'm enough. Self-acceptance. And
Yeah.
then when
And we
you have
teach
that
them that
self-acceptance,
through
then
us. Yeah.
inevitably you it will impart that to your
Mm,
child.
mm,
Okay, this is what's going on. All right, we can work with that. Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Uh,
And now we're getting alongside our children
yeah.
to come up with the strategies and the approaches that are going to help everybody.
Yeah.
And now they're learning stuff and they're learning the skills that they're going to need for the rest of their lives. Here's a really important idea, which is that we want to say to our children the things we want our children to say to themselves.
Yeah. You said that to me the other day and I wrote it down. I was like, damn. Yeah, but that's so true, right? Like we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sort of the things that our parents say to us become our recordings, our
Mm-hmm.
inner recordings, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
Yeah.
And I worked with somebody many years ago whose parent, and I'm sure they weren't terribly serious about it. I'm sure it was just like an offhand remark, but they recorded something really negative.
Mm.
It's like you're a shit for brains.
Oh.
And this individual was well into adulthood,
Mm.
a doctor,
Wow.
and we had to unpack that.
Yeah.
We had to unpack that because it was undermining their present moment.
Mm.
So we want to be really use care and compassion when we talk to our kids because they are recording the things we say.
Mm. Yeah. To our kids and to ourselves,
And to
definitely.
ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it starts
Yeah.
with what you say to yourself.
Yeah. I'm curious about like you talked about transitions before in that last example you gave us, and that is something that I see a lot of parents and adults with ADHD struggling with is managing transitions, like whether it be, from a kid playing to having dinner or, going from one activity to the next kind of thing. Do you have any suggestions or strategies for how to help people manage that?
Um, yeah, I have something that may be helpful. So when I'm working with clients, adult clients especially, and they're trying to learn how to manage their time,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about it like, so again, the diabetes metaphor, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
constantly managing their blood sugar, right?
Yeah.
Those of us with ADHD are constantly managing our emotions and our motivation. How do we do that? We're very careful or strategic about how we manage our tasks, our
Hmm.
breaks, and our rewards. Okay,
Tasks, breaks, and
breaks and
rewards.
rewards,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So has to do a lot with planning. What have I set myself up for today?
Mm.
Have I strategically managed my tasks, my breaks, and my rewards? So my response here may be wandering a little bit away from your question. So if you want to bring me back to your question, that's fine. But what I'm saying is that if you set up yourself up with a day which is task heavy,
Yeah.
and you don't really know where the tasks end and where you're going to get a break, it's probably not going to support your intentions.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that that you're planning your day, right? You're
Yeah.
not just making it up every day as you go along. There are times for that, but not every day. That you've given yourself something to manage that is doable.
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that as well. I think one of the ways that I think I have done that for myself is like when I transition between things, like as an adult, I will often go for a walk because I
Mhm.
help my brain kind of, unwind from the thing I was doing and process any emotion. I'm getting some dopamine and all the things. And then I feel kind of fresh and ready and able to switch, so it's kind of like a little connector in between the tasks that I've
Absolutely.
created.
That was a beautiful example
Yeah.
of a brain break,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
had some tasks to do,
Yeah.
and then you took a brain break. And what's wonderful about what you just said is that a lot of us, I'm guilty, um, will sometimes fall into scrolling
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can
when
relate.
really we would be wiser to go for a walk.
Yeah, because that, like, if we're really honest with ourselves about that, and I actually shared on social media about this yesterday, is I have discovered that if I do scroll and I'm generally trying to get some dopamine and I'm wanting a break from what I'm doing and I'm just wanting to switch off, I am effectively wanting a brain break and a rest. However, I don't think that that actually gives me a rest
It
or a
doesn't.
brain break.
It
It
doesn't.
it leads to, going down a rabbit hole, or I start
Yeah, yeah,
comparing myself to other people, or thinking, oh, I should
yes.
look at that or do that, or I should, add that into my day. And then
Not a
my brain
wise
is not
reset.
rested
No, no,
at
it's not.
all.
So, I think
Yeah.
where I was headed, with my response, was that we have to manage our dopamine levels. I mean,
Mm,
dopamine
I
is
agree.
more complicated than that, but code
Yeah.
dopamine. So that we go from a heavy dopamine task like admin, and then we go right from that to another heavy dopamine task like grocery shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to another heavy. We are not going to manage those transitions well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you manage your transitions by looking at what you're trying to do and making sure that you're not going, from one dopamine depleting task to the next without a break.
Mm-hmm.
It's as
Yep.
similar to what happens when we pick the kids up from school. We've
Yeah.
gone from a really
Yeah.
intense chemical situation, and we can't go right into another one. We need a break.
I think that, yeah, that was the exact example I had coming as you were explaining that, because I know for us, like when we get the kids from school and if we bring them home, it's like, crazy house for a while. Whereas if we can take them to a park to either kick a ball around or like play on a playground or like we live near the beach, like if we can do any of that, that is helping them hugely. It's like that little connector in between that helps them to, regulate their emotions and unwind from the day and, also rebuild some dopamine and all of that. And then they can come home and then it's about, yeah, like, okay, do we need a snack? Do we have any homework? What are we doing next kind of thing? So,
Yep,
yeah,
yep. And
yeah.
that's where a lot of times those routines, um, not too rigidly held. Routine,
Mm,
yes, not too rigidly held. I mean, it
mm,
depends on the child. Some children are, very set on their routines, which is fine. That could be good.
yeah.
But those of us with ADHD crave novelty. So while we need that structure and routine is our friend, Sometimes we have to make sure it has wiggle room.
Yeah.
There's a little wiggle room so we don't feel like, so it doesn't become mundane.
As you were talking about that, I did have a question from a parent who both him and his wife, they both have ADHD and they have a toddler who their toddler thrives on routine and they struggle to keep it. So I'm thinking about it through that lens and I was just wondering, can you speak to that at all?
Well, that's an interesting situation. Well, yeah, kids do tend to thrive on having a routine.
Mm.
A couple different ideas come to mind. Maybe parents spell each other. Okay, you do that routine and I'll do this routine so that, when it's your turn to be managing the child's routine, the other person is doing something spontaneous
Oh, yeah, I
and you
like that.
take turns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, or
Yeah, you could have, days sort of thing. Like, yeah, you could have yeah, switch things up a little bit. Yeah, but like you say, also holding loosely to that, like not holding on tightly to it, holding on to it loosely.
And often, even kids who really thrive on routine and really need that routine, with enough advance notice, can cope.
Yeah.
Um,
I like as you say, actually, I've got an example of that. When you talk about advanced notice, like we have one child who, when he's on screen time, so if he gets an iPad, he has a tantrum or a meltdown often when he comes out off that, and he has Williams syndrome, and he struggles to regulate his emotions and understand what's happening. But one of the things that I have found incredibly helpful is I will say to him, "Hey, buddy, you got 10 minutes to go." And he doesn't necessarily grasp time, but I go up and I'll say, "Hey, that means that you're going to be off the iPad soon. Now let's talk about what's going to happen and we'll talk through that." Right. And then I'll go up to him like with 2 minutes to go and I'll be like, "Hey, buddy, like you've only got a couple of minutes to go. So remember, when we come off the iPad, we're going to put it down and we're going to come over to the dinner table and we're going to have dinner and we're going to have a nice meal together." And like I'll talk him through what's about to happen.
mhm,
And I find that talking him through that a couple of times really helps him and
mhm.
it gives him the language for what's about to happen as well. And then he'll go,
Yeah,
"Now I'm going to have dinner and I've finished with the iPad." And most of the time that works really, really well. Like he's had that like kind of seed planted, shall we say.
that's brilliant. Well, so it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a social story
Oh
right there.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is
I mean,
too.
it's saying,
Mm,
you, okay, but it's a little bit, it's explicitly helping him to understand what's about to happen
mm,
because this brain isn't going to do that.
mm.
And the other thing that you're doing there is you're helping him transition from a high dopamine activity being on the device to what is hopefully another high dopamine activity, which is having dinner with your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't wanna tell, like, a child with ADHD who's on a device, "Come and empty the dishwasher,"
Yeah.
because you're going
Yeah.
from a high dopamine activity to a low dopamine activity, and you're going to get pushback.
Yeah.
I remember, I didn't when my kids were growing up, I didn't want, gaming devices in the house. However, my husband had a Game Boy,
Hmm.
so the kids had the little Game Boy, which they played with.
Hmm.
And at once my son had been on the Game Boy for a while and he had to come off it, he was really grumpy. So I, before he got on the Game Boy, I'd be like, okay, so you're going to be on the Game Boy for a while. Now when you put that down, there's going to be a grumpy period, right? You're aware of that.
Mm,
So what we're going to do is, what can you do maybe during the grumpy period? Okay.
mm. Yeah, so
Again,
it's not a surprise, right? Like you're
it's
expecting
not a
it. We're going to
surprise.
talk about it. What can we do? Yeah.
And it's not a judgment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's not we're not getting upset about it. We're saying, "Okay,
Yeah.
this is what's happening."
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually really good. I've been thinking a little bit about that as it relates to the dopamine element because that's such a high concentrate of dopamine that they're getting. And then they come off and it's like,
A
now
drop.
what? It's like
Yeah,
this massive drop. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
man,
exactly.
like, there
Yeah.
can be some pushback and some, yeah, like the grumpy period. So
So
to walk them through that and expect, plan for that rather than expecting, you should be happy you've just had it 30 minutes on there or anything like that. Like
you
remove
know how we
that.
feel about anything that starts with the should word, right?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Do you have time for just one or two more questions? I'm just mindful of the
Sure.
time. Awesome. Okay. So, another question I had from a listener is when it comes to getting ready for school in the morning.
Yeah.
So, she herself has ADHD, the parent, and had a real hard time with that. And now she's got a 3 year old. And she said it's just even harder. I am keen to hear your thoughts on that. And I actually have one thing that came to mind as well. So, I'll add that.
Xena, I apologize. When you asked me if I'd had enough time, I had to quickly look to see when the next thing is, and I got distracted.
Oh, it's
I heard
okay.
something about a 3-year-old. I'm sorry.
I'll ask you again. So
Thank you.
the next question I've got here from a listener is when it comes to getting ready for school in the
Yes, ready for
morning.
school. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so this is something that they themselves kind of struggle with. They're a parent who has
Yes,
ADHD and then
yes.
they've got a 3 year old.
Right.
And they were just asking for some support and strategies around
So
that.
is it the 3-year-old they're getting ready to go
I
to
think they
daycare?
both, like, I would say the 3 year old's going to daycare, and my
Right.
understanding is that they both have ADHD, but I could be off about that. Yeah.
Okay, so they're trying, so a couple adults trying to get ready probably to go to work while getting a child ready to go to
Daycare?
daycare.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if they both have ADHD, there's a very high likelihood that the child also has ADHD,
Mhm.
although it'd be a little early to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
treat that or anything. So what you have to remember is that the brain with ADHD is a little behind in maturity in some respects. Not all respects, but some.
Hmm.
So I think you need to look at what's going on, again, curiosity, compassion, and say, okay, what's the easy way here?
Mm. Remove steps and make it
Usually,
simple.
yeah, usually things get tricky because we get caught on how we believe the morning should go. All
Yeah.
right. I should be able to say, okay, put your jacket on, and they'll put their jacket on, but no, that's not happening. So I think we have to look at the situation, and especially if we got two parents trying to head off to school, what's going to be the easy way
Mm.
for now? What's
Yeah.
just gonna be I worked with one family, their child was a little older than 3, but, what they realized when they took a close look at what their expectations were, is the child was expected to get up in the morning, leave their room, go down the hallway to the kitchen, have breakfast, and then after breakfast, they were gonna go back and down the hallway into the loo and do their bathroom stuff, then they're gonna leave the bathroom and go to their bedroom and do their bedroom stuff, and then to go back to the bathroom and do their other bathroom stuff, and they were gonna go back.
You've
Okay.
lost me already.
About 6 bridges too far. So
Yeah.
they moved the whole morning operation to the kitchen.
Mm.
Toothbrush is there, the comb is there, the breakfast is there, the shoes, the backpack, the coat is there. Everything is
Hmm.
in the kitchen.
Yeah.
All they had to do was get themselves to the kitchen, and everything happened right there.
Yeah, that's perfect because that lends itself to an idea that I use, which is having a visual picture of what done looks like and doing that in two different ways. So showing the child that, and generally this is for a child a little bit older, but like, in your backpack, we're going to have your lunchbox, we're going to have your books, we're going to have your drink bottle. Like these are the things, and these are the things that you need to put on. And you'll have like your uniform, and then you've got a picture of like your coat and your shoes. And then you've got like a picture of like brushing your teeth and combing your hair. And so it's like the visual picture that explains the
Visuals are really
steps.
helpful.
Yeah,
Visuals
the
are
steps
really
and the
helpful.
done.
And
Yeah.
there's your structure. There's your structure.
Yeah.
The visual prompts create structure.
Yeah.
I have to create structure. I call it a hierarchy of priority, and it's like a, like looks like an outline, a topic, and then boom, 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 and topic, and
Yeah.
I keep that next to me on my wall because when I sit down at my desk in the morning, I'm like, so
Yeah.
many
Now
different ways
what?
to go.
Yeah.
So I have what I call a hierarchy priority for myself. It's not pictorial, it's words,
Yeah.
but it helps me structure my activity.
Yeah, I'm the same actually. Like I have like a visual, like in my calendar, I like have certain things that get done every day and I have them in there because if I don't see it, I forget to do it. Like it's very out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
And I think like when we talk about a morning though, I've seen this with a lot of the clients I've worked with, is we have such a big expectation of air quotes what we should do in a morning, what the morning should look like. But if we can, strip it right back. Like I've had clients go, well, I should have a shower and then I need to like wash my hair and I need to dry it. And I've said, well, what if you just don't have a shower? And they're like, what? I can do that? I'm like, I know, radical, right? Like, you just get up, get dressed, get your breakfast and go to work. And they're like, wow, actually, yeah. Like if
Yeah,
we take so many of the expectations out of it and make it more simple for ourselves,
simplify.
yeah, it
Yes,
gets way easier. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. One question I had from multiple listeners is if they're wanting to learn more about how to support their kids with ADHD, do you have any recommendations for books or resources that they could look at?
So usually how I approach that question is this. I tend to go a lot to the Attitude magazine. So that's ADT, Attitude magazine. It's
Yeah.
coming out of the US. It's US based. And so, take what you like and leave the rest. But I like it because I think it's really good. Their panel of experts are genuinely experts.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it because it's basically blog post. It's short, and
It
I c-
is, yeah.
I can get that principle and I can get that idea, and I'm on my way quickly. There are a lot of books and so forth out there, but every author will approach the topic from their own point of view, which is fine. I'm not saying any of them are wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you probably have to read 8 books in order to get a real spectrum of information.
Mm-hmm.
So frankly, I just tend to drop it into my search engine. What do I do when this happens?
Yeah.
And see what comes up.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Attitude website as well. I use that a lot when I'm doing my own research because they are very research based and have like you say small digestible articles, and then they'll often link to other sources, which is great. So I'll link to that for people in the show notes. I think that that's a great recommendation.
And like I said, there's some books which I like better than others, and the books are not wrong, but I find it difficult to step back from a book and say, okay, how does that exactly apply to me?
Yeah. Yeah, I have got like a huge array of books about ADHD. And as you say, like it's very much based on that person's opinion. And while some of them are fantastic and I'm always making recommendations, there are others that I think kind of take what resonates and then leave the rest, is what I will say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that, anybody who is having, challenges with their parenting, any challenges with their children, I think that they should come and see you because I'm a
Oh,
huge
thank you.
fan of you and your work. So
Thank you.
please tell our listeners, how can they find you, how can they connect with you, and how can they work with you?
The name of my business is ADHD Sorted.
Hmm.
And you are welcome to plug that into the search engine, and I will come up and drop me an email, and we go from there. I my sessions tend to be pretty information intensive because I like to see my clients often thriving as quickly as possible
Yeah.
because quite frankly, I am the approach I take is I'm the person I wanted when I was in my late
Mm.
30s and I'd had enough. I'd been to
Yeah.
therapists, I've been to counselors. I was just like, look, just tell me what's going on here. What do I do about it? And so, when I work with clients, it's like, let's get clear on what's happening here and what do we do about it? So, I find that people generally come away with a lot of good information pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think we're often thriving and creating our own systems, creating our own strategies, learning new
Yeah.
skills. But at the very core of it, it's really bringing that, as you said so brilliantly, that self-acceptance.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, ADHD sorted. Give me a call and let's see what we can do.
Awesome. I will link to that in our show notes as well so people can click directly through to your website. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing with us, Brett. I so appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure, Xena. There have been great questions, and I just love some of the things that you've sort of come up with exactly right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
If you are loving what you're learning here on the podcast, but you still feel like your ADHD is holding you back, I can help. Using evidence-based coaching tools and my own experiences, I'll help you to manage your emotions and feel better, to increase your productivity, grow your self-confidence, and create the life that you were meant for. Visit xenajones.com/thrive and schedule an ADHD support session to get started.